us
I
next
see
month.
Charlie
but-
Jacobs, I see Charlie Jacobs today, I'll ask him.
You ought to be on every bus. You ought to be.
No, Charlie Tetrick, of course, they're over in Mission, for Christ's sakes. Let's see if he shows up.
I saw your son. That's it doing. I was messing with.
Oh my God. Yeah, they're good people, good people, good people, good people.
Oh, here we go.
Push it.
Good morning.
Morning.
Bring the meeting to order. Per usual, we will begin this morning with our Pledge of Allegiance, given this morning by Sergeant Deb Randall. We welcome Deb here. Deb is in our Traffic Accident Investigation Unit, and specifically specializing in our fatality investigations, which, as some of you may know, can carry some onerous responsibility. So Sergeant Randall, we thank you for your service, and we ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, sir. I pledge allegiance
And Chaplain Gorman will give our invocation.
Let's pray this morning. Maker and creator of everyone and everything, as those who work to serve and protect our city, we are grateful for the important work you've entrusted us with. We acknowledge our dependence on you in that work, knowing that unless you watch over our city, the watchman stays awake in vain. And so this morning we ask that you would grant us wisdom and understanding, courage and conviction, and hope-filled realism as we embrace the work before us. And we pray that you would watch over our city and the men and women who protect it. Amen.
We will begin this morning. Chief, I would ask if you would come to the lectern and address the Crimes Against Children investigation, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to discuss the conclusions of our internal investigation into the Crimes Against Children unit. I think it's very important to share what we've done to correct problems, protect our city's most vulnerable victims, and restore trust in the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. Sincerely, I am disappointed. The investigation revealed issues with the organization as well as individual commanders, supervisors, and detectives. I'm disappointed because I know we are better than this. On behalf of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, I want to apologize to the children and families who did not receive the service they should expect from us. I also want to apologize to the people of Kansas City who rightfully expect their police department to provide excellent service to vulnerable victims. You will see our improvement in the steps we've taken to correct these problems and provide exemplary service and justice. I'll share the findings of the internal investigation, the cases of which generally transpired from 2011 to 2016. It identified two areas where failure occurred, at the organizational level and at the individual level. Organizationally, failure reached to the highest levels of this organization. There were no processes in place within this organization to address the issues of detectives' caseloads growing too large. For example, one detective was trying to investigate 80 cases a month. Another detective said he inherited 72 cases the day he started in the unit. Their pleas for more people and more resources went unheard by command staff. The department also failed to ensure commanders, supervisors, and detectives took adequate quality and control measures in case management, meaning how to best balance caseloads and allocate time. The investigation also identified personal failures among commanders, supervisors, and detectives. Among these were failure to address caseload issues, failure to follow up on some cases in a timely manner, and ultimately failure to submit cases prepared most effectively for prosecution. The investigation took considerable time. We did not want to sacrifice a thorough review for expediency. On this table, you will see the 28 binders of investigative documents generated by our internal affairs units in this case. Working with other department members, Internal Affairs ultimately identified 149 cases from the Crimes Against Children section that did not receive the attention they needed. On each of those cases, our internal investigators had to determine who did what, when they did it, and what was not done. The members of the Crimes Against Children section were given the opportunity to tell their side of the story as well. These 28 binders of investigative documents were turned over to a specifically selected internal work group composed of members with various ranks and experience to review and inspect the internal affairs case files. The work group members were pulled off of their regular duties and assigned to devote 100% of their time to review the investigation and make both procedural and disciplinary recommendations directly to me. I have reviewed the recommendations of the work group and of all of the case files. We have now come to a conclusion, which is why we are here today. The investigation resulted in internal disciplinary measures being recommended against 17 members who were assigned to the Crimes Against Children section or its chain of command. These recommendations range from disciplinary counseling to termination. Of the 17 members recommended for discipline, 7 are no longer employed by the department. According to state statute, I cannot share which members received discipline, and these internal investigation files are not public record. When the extent of the case management issues within the Crimes Against Children section came to light, the department took the unprecedented step of removing 7 detectives and 2 sergeants from their investigative duties. Other veteran detectives were brought in on special assignment in the beginning of 2016 to take over cases and prepare them for prosecution. A selection process took place to identify new detectives to be permanently assigned to the Crimes Against Children section. Most, if not all, of the families in the 149 cases we identified that had to be reworked have been notified of the status of their cases. If you are one of these families and still have questions, please call the KCPD Juvenile Section at 234-5150. The Crimes Against Children section's name has changed back when it was previously called the Juvenile Section. It is now fully staffed with the addition of 2 additional detectives for a total of 10 detectives and 2 sergeants. This creates an entirely new staff and chain of command for the Juvenile Section. Staffing for this section will remain a top priority. In April 2016, our department implemented quality control measures. We have reviewed thousands of cases to ensure both patrol officers and investigators have followed up thoroughly and in a timely fashion on their assigned cases. We are also working with the department members to improve case file submissions so they have the greatest possible opportunity for successful prosecution. This has improved our processes and quality across all investigative units, not just the Juvenile Section. Since I became chief, all department commanders now have undergone additional leadership and ethics training to enhance accountability and prevent complacency at every level of the organization. This is beyond our normal training program. We took the lessons learned from what happened in Crimes Against Children and applied them across all investigative units on the department. Both a sergeant and a captain must now review caseloads every month with their detectives. Whenever a detective marks a case as inactive, a supervisor must review it to determine whether that inactivation was appropriate, and a commander must review the supervisor's recommendations. We have enhanced our relationship with child advocacy groups and now have asked them to hold us accountable. Feel free to ask them how we're doing. We have a memorandum of understanding with the Child Protection Center in Jackson County, the Children's Advocacy Center serving Clay and Platte counties, and the Jackson County Children's Division. In addition to those, Juvenile Section members meet regularly with Children's Mercy Hospital caseworkers. The KCPD is working now to co-locate our Special Victims Unit with the Child Protection Center and the Metropolitan Organization to Counter Sexual Assault in one facility. The proposal includes on-site representatives from the Missouri Department of Family Services, Children's Mercy Hospital, Rose Brooks, and other social service organizations. The idea for the co-location is to have a one-stop shop where victims of child physical and sexual abuse, along with victims of domestic violence and adult sexual abuse, can receive all their services in one place. We believe victims will receive more comprehensive and convenient services by only having to go to one location. This co-location model is currently being used in Dallas, Omaha, and San Diego with great success. We are working with our partners to identify a location and funding for this facility. This should materialize in the near future. This partnership will enhance our ability to serve the most vulnerable victims. The conclusion of our internal investigation into the Crimes Against Children section marks an end of a regrettable time period in which the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department failed to serve child victims in a way they needed and deserved. It is my job and the job of everyone in this organization to ensure it never happens again anywhere in this police department. We have worked diligently to recover from this setback and get justice for every child in Kansas City who has experienced abuse or neglect, especially those in the 149 cases we identified. We have implemented training and numerous layers of accountability to ensure all victims get the most professional and effective investigations we can provide. Our partnerships with child advocacy organizations have never been stronger, and we are eagerly anticipating the chance to truly work with them all together in one building. We look forward to showing you with our actions that the people of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department are now, more than ever, dedicated to serve and protect the people of our city with professionalism, honor, and integrity.
Thank you, Chief. We're going to take about 10 minutes break and make the chief available for questions, and then we will reconvene.
Yeah. Morning. Good morning to you.
Hey, how you doing?
Fine, how are you? About average.
Thank you. Nice to know.
Barely.
Hey, what's up, Slick? How you doing?
Mind your way.
Delicious.
Yeah, you got something better to do?
Yeah.
Do that, please. Yeah.
Organizationally, it just happened. None of these people are bad people that are involved in this. There was a bad situation, and like I say, there was some individual responsibility that went along with it. But it is disappointing, and I'm glad to be set up. As I said, to the future, I think we're headed in the right direction. Well, we put our checks and balances in place that we don't think it will happen. I can't say ever, I can't give a guarantee, but I will tell you that we feel confident that the things we have in place now will prevent it from happening again. Absolutely. Yes, there was indications, there was things that had come to light. Some of them weren't addressed, and they should have been. Again, we think we have processes in place now that shouldn't happen again. And some of it, frankly, is just good listening. If people would have listened, things could have been different.
Chief, you walked in the midst of this.
Well, I didn't have all the facts till the conclusion of the investigation, so I appreciate Chief Forte initiating this investigation so that we could find out our weaknesses and we can move forward and, like I say, put the processes in place so that hopefully this never happens again. You bet. Thank you. Thanks for coming today. Appreciate it. Thanks, Lon.
Hold on a second, This is hot.
The head says he's not. I had to go with your sister up to the account. Church, man.
Oh, yeah.
Keep saying dumb shit.
Yeah. Hey, we got that hardship from Ted.
Yeah.
We're gonna give him 30 days, so we
And I have to ask my guy if I said, well,
because that's
She
still
said-
kind of short time.
but it is, but she said he was told, Rita said that he was told several months before it was coming. So he had already had 2-3 months notice.
Rita was told to do it too, but she was never doing it either. Remember when they were supposed to?
Okay. Yeah, I told him to go with the 30 days because I even thought of that too. How about a transition period?
Because I mean,
And again, that's when they said they already had several months.
Last call for photos.
if he's been working for
Years.
years,
You can't get blindsided, right?
So I talked to Sharon, I talked to the chief, he's cool, we didn't even send it to him. I talked to Sharon, she's like cool. So I sent it to Sharon, saying, basically, it'll be effective.
Perfect. I almost did it. So,
You know, come on, we need to start calling them.
Freestone too.
He's talking about everything he disclosed was self-disclosed.
Yep.
It was not symptoms that you would observe.
Yep. I think we should have to tell them. That's funny. He's as bad as King. They're just ridiculous. Let me know.
Well, his stuff is still telling.
Yeah, there's no evidence. No.
Right, no.
He's full of shit. He wants to go to law school. She knows that too. I mean, I'm out.
Yeah, under me. Or however you're going to, yeah, just wait till it's under me, and then we'll do it.
Man, I'll tell you, I stole your tie. Yeah, they didn't tell you? I told them, send it before you get tired. $20. All right.
Go ahead, reconvene now. Do we have a city architect's report today from Mr. Bosch? Great, welcome.
Commissioners, Mayor James, members of the Police Department, Eric Bosch, City Architect. Thanks for the opportunity to update you on some of the projects that I'm working on with Major Stewart and with the facilities group on trying to maintain some of the buildings that the Police Department occupies. Several buildings are in need of re-roofing, some boilers, condensing units and things like that, and I'm helping them address some of those items. Something that I've been working on for a while is a long-range plan to address capital issues. So this would be a forecast or a path or some type of a program that we can put together that will help us assemble the needs for the police department buildings that they occupy, and also put together a budget on forecasting a 5-year plan, things like mechanical systems, when should we put a new roof on, for instance, Metro Patrol. So it's really looking out there to see things that we know are going to come up eventually, and we might as well address them now and determining, putting a budget together so we can be prepared for 2020 and put that in the budget in the city and request that jointly from the police department and the city to put that in the next year's budget. I open any questions you might have.
I'd like to ask you something, Mr. Bosch. I remember you mentioning this building maintenance plan. I thought it's a terrific idea. What do you plan to provide us some sort of a written list or
Correct.
dates of?
This is pretty
and
common.
When would you anticipate doing something
Well,
like that?
it's a little bit about funding. I need to identify some funding to contact a professional engineer and architect. And what they will do is take the existing drawings for the building, calculate when the different time periods would need to address some of these. They'll look at some of the mechanical units. They'll do some testing on some of the roofs just to make sure that we know what the lifespan will be. You know, sometimes we put a roof on a building and they guarantee it for 20, 25 years, but circumstances could be that there could be some damage from weather or some insulation issues that we're not aware of. So I would anticipate that if I can get funding secured, we can start some of the buildings, not to address them all, but I would go backwards in time. So our first building we'd probably look at is Central Patrol, which is the oldest building in the portfolio, and then work our way through Metro, South Patrol, and then address the Academy and address Shoal Creek, and then eventually come back to this building, and then East Patrol and the Crime Lab.
Thanks. It's just a great idea. I really appreciate you doing it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Bosch, thank you very much. And Councilwoman Kennedy, is she, I didn't see her this morning. Okay, we'll recognize her in the event she comes in later. Chief, anything else in terms of general discussion for you? I think you have someone here you're going to recognize today.
I would. I'd like Ron Fletcher to come up to the podium, if you would, and talk about the foundation a little bit. Our big event, or the foundation's big event, not ours, is coming up here in February, and Ron's going to give a little update on where we are with the foundation.
And Ron, if you would too, for people here who might not know, give a little bit of a broader understanding of the foundation and its relationship with the department, I think would be helpful to people.
You bet, you bet.
And welcome.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. Ron Fletcher, just so you know who I am, I spent 27 years here, retired in 2015, and then started with the foundation in May of 2016. The Police Foundation was formed in 2009 by the Board of Police Commissioners with the sole purpose to provide equipment, training, and technology that's above and beyond the normal level of support through tax support, grants, et cetera, for KCPD. Everything that the foundation purchases for KCPD has to have a nexus to reducing violent crime. That's our main goal as a foundation, is to help KCPD prevent violent crime, to buy them the technology, training, and equipment to help them reach that goal. I'd be remiss as I start off here if I didn't take a moment to recognize Commissioner Wagner for his many years of service on our Police Foundation board. Prior to stepping down from the Police Foundation to become a commissioner, he played an integral role in helping to raise funds for the foundation and in turn to support the KCPD. So I want to thank him publicly for his many years of service to the Police Foundation. We certainly miss you over there, sir. 2018 was a great year for the foundation. We helped fund the placement of a social worker at every patrol division. We secured a grant for the portable gunshot detection system. We funded 15 Star Chase devices that'll help reduce the risk to the officers and citizens during pursuits. Purchased 2 hybrid robotic total stations for the accident investigation section. Those are used to map major crime scenes and serious injury and fatal accidents. We purchased 4 additional TrueNarc handheld devices for the department, bringing the total number purchased by the foundation to 6. These devices allow the officers to test narcotics on scene using a laser device, which reduces the risk to the officers and allows for the suspects to be held into custody until court versus being released while we waited on lab results. We also help fund the YPI program, the Youth Police Initiative Program, which is a program that helps break down barriers between the officers and the youth that they encounter. We also purchased multiple cameras, license plate readers, and drones for the department. Finally, I think one of the most important purchases that we were involved with was helping to purchase a ballistic helmet for every officer on the police department. We've done this through partnerships with the city, with the police department, and with other foundations here in Kansas City, to include the Hall Family Foundation, H&R Block, et cetera. We don't supplant. In other words, the Police Foundation doesn't buy equipment, technology, and training for the department that they are normally responsible for, i.e. computers, guns, cars. With that said, we have served through as a pass-through for citizens that want to donate to the police department. For instance, Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, when he goes to a city, he generally buys a canine for a police department, so he purchased a canine for the police department. Last year, a very generous citizen contacted me and wanted to purchase 3 canines for the police department. Again, not something we would purchase because the department normally does, but we served as a pass-through to make that happen. In 2019, we're going to continue to fund projects that come to us from the department that are a priority to the chief. The chief and I meet monthly to discuss ongoing projects to ensure the foundation is aware of his priorities at all times. Any department member can make a request for a piece of equipment or technology through their chain of command. It goes to the chief for final approval before coming over to the foundation. Once the chief approves it as a priority for the department, it's presented to the Police Foundation for consideration. We have 3 liaisons. I saw a couple of them here today. Deputy Chief Dave Bosworth, Major Derek McCollum, and Captain Lionel Colon are liaisons from the department to the foundation. They help officers put projects together that are submitted to the foundation, and then they come to our board meetings each month and answer questions for our board. City matching funds. Troy Schulte and the city have been phenomenal partners of the Police Foundation to allow us to do what we do. In 2014, the city and Troy provided $125,000 in matching funds, $250,000 in 15, $350,000 in 16, $450,000 in 17, and $500,000 last year, all from the public safety sales tax, a section in there that he has available for maintenance. Every dollar that we receive that we go out and raise instantly becomes $2 because of that relationship with the city, with Troy, et cetera. We hold a fundraising event every February downtown at the Mulebach Hotel. Last year we had about 700 attendees. The lobby's full of displays from the department to include tactical response, bomb and arson, firearms section, which allows the donors that are there to have a positive interaction with the officers and learn a little bit about what the officers do. We always have a keynote speaker. Some of our past keynote speakers, General McChrystal, William Evans, Boston Police Commissioner this year. It's going to be New York Police Commissioner William O'Neill. We give donors the opportunity to host an officer at their table, a uniformed officer. It's a great opportunity for the donor to ask specific questions and for the officers to see firsthand how much support they have for them. Chief, give me the cut here. I've got about 2 minutes left, or a minute left. At our dinner,
You don't have to pay any attention to him, we don't. You don't have to pay any attention to him, we don't. Oh, sorry, did you hear that? Oh. Was that loud?
At our dinner last February, I'll tell you why it's important in our mind to put an officer, other than the reasons I just told you. We had a canine officer sit at a donor's table last year. During dinner, he was talking about his role, his experiences as a canine officer, and that they were about to lose 2 canines to retirement, which is always difficult on the unit, on the department, et cetera, to try to get new dogs. A couple of months after the dinner, I get a phone call from a very generous donor that said, hey, I had this canine officer sitting there, told me you guys were losing a couple of dogs. I'd like to fund that. Sent me a check for $24,000, not even solicited. About a month later, I was notified by the department that they were losing an interdiction dog unexpectedly to retirement. I reached out to this same donor, told him the circumstances. He sent me another check for $14 grand. $38,000 to buy 3 canines for the department that didn't have to come out of their budget or out of the city. Our board meets once a month with the exceptions of July and August. Generally, we meet at a police facility. We have an officer or a unit come and talk to the board, educate them about different functions of each unit. Narcotics and vice, bomb and arson, et cetera, will come and talk about their units and what they do. It kind of gives our board an inside look at the department. Finally, since 2014, the Police Foundation has raised almost $3 million raised or collected almost $3 million for KCPD, and since inception in 2009, that number climbs to almost $5 million. I provided each of you a list with some of the equipment, technology, and training that we purchased over the years since 2014. That's the end of my presentation. I'm certainly open for questions, should anyone have any.
No, I don't, if anybody has questions, but Ron, I just, on behalf of the board, again, extend our appreciation, our great appreciation for the work you do and for the work that the foundation does. It is an indispensable partner in what we do, and we're blessed in this city and in this department to have a tremendous relationship with our city. We've got an unusual structure here, but we've got great spirit and people involved, individual personalities that make it all work, and that's the mayor, that's the city manager, but it's also people like you who are out there doing what you do, and that is critically important to our ability to function and serve the citizens well. So just on behalf of the board, thank you and to your organization.
Thanks so much for having me.
Can I make a couple comments?
Okay.
I've been involved with the foundation from 2009. I mean, our department has benefited so much from this organization in getting equipment and training and other things that we would have never been able to afford. We're running a project right now with license plate readers and cameras and all kinds of stuff. We'll have a published academic paper on it when it's done to actually reduce crime. I mean, none of these things, innovative things, would have been possible to be cutting edge without the foundation, because as you know, our budget, when we put it up at the May 1st and we implement it, the money is all accounted for the year basically when we start out. So if someone wants a drone or wants this, there's no way in the budget to have that without the foundation. And just speaking of the drone, when we were at the Call for Backup event one year, there was a police shooting, and that drone left there, went out to a scene in Kansas, and found the suspect who had shot at the officers using infrared in the bushes. And that technology bought by the foundation, and a safe apprehension of a guy who shot at the police with no further incident. So all of this is making a huge difference in our police department, and without the support of these civic leaders, it just wouldn't be possible. So I just want to say they have our gratitude, our thanks, and we very much appreciate their involvement in our department. And then I think there should be a plug for the Call for Backup event on February 22nd of this year. James O'Neill, the police commissioner in New York, as you know, we traveled to New York to listen and to see what that department is doing. He is going to bring back here some of the things there. I think it's going to be a very interesting evening, and encourage all to attend.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Thank you again. Councilwoman Kennedy, I'll recognize you, please. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. First, Happy New Year to you all. I
New Year.
wanted to come this morning to address the article that was in the Star editorial this Sunday, and a few of you were actually referencing that article when they were talking about crime in the city and what the plan is and kind of what we should be doing. And the conversation is really stemming really around politics and what the politicians are saying or not saying. But I wanted to highlight what we are doing, and that the people on this board in this room have a good sense of what needs to be addressed. I'll reference some comments that were made. The prosecutor mentioned that new partners, new non-traditional partners need to be brought to the table, and hearing the comments about the foundation just really highlights the importance of having the ability to engage people that are outside of the issue, to bring resources and new perspectives to dealing with our issues. Mr. President, your comments that you made in reference that it's not a one solution that we're going to have to take it. We can't arrest our way out of it, and that's all true. But one thing I want to reiterate is that all the solutions that we have on the table are all good solutions, and none of them are designed to solve all the problems. And I think that the data supports that what they're intending to do, whether it be NOVA or Aim for Peace or Mothers in Charge, they're all making impact in their respective areas of what they're designed to make an impact in. I think what people are really saying is, what are we going to do to prevent it, to prevent the escalation of these incidents that are occurring of gun violence? And that's more of a prevention conversation. And as much of the things that we do, you know, the council is supporting things that are more community-based. Just this past weekend, the chief was there with the movie night. The 5th and 6th District Council people hosted that in partnership with the police department, sponsored that. Things are building relationships, but I think what people are saying is, what are we doing to address these communities that are under the most distress to reduce the likelihood of violence occurring in those situations? We're hearing so many kids, we're hearing so many random acts of violence that are occurring. The good thing is that the police are responding promptly, and the police are doing their due diligence, and you know, the first responders, the medics are doing a great job at life-saving services. So all those things are functioning properly. What's missing is our ability to be able to really deal with the human element of this more effectively. And we have some components of that with the social workers. With NOVA, they have some good components of it where they provide some resources for people that want to turn things around. But we have to look at the environments which are breeding this negative element in our community, and they're all consistent. You know, in my experience, I grew up in 64130. I just recently moved from 64130 in the past year because of gun violence that I personally experienced, and some of you all are aware of what happened in that incident. And then the end of the year, I lost a family member to gun violence in 64130. And so in those situations, three things that have been constant in all of that. It's been an element of substance abuse, mental health issues, or some form of hopelessness or despair. And all those incidents that I personally experienced. And so we have to figure out how are we going to begin to address those elements as a community. We're not looking, I don't think that anybody's looking for the police department to be that problem solver, but the police department has been good at partnering with people who do offer those resources. And so I'll be having ongoing dialogue with community partners on what they feel like the best vehicle to align all those resources together to address things intentionally, because we have great resources in the community, but they're not always all aligned around a problem. And the problem here being gun violence is what we're talking about specifically. I think that there's a huge opportunity. When NOVA was being established, they looked at what stakeholders need to be at the table, and they brought everybody together and formed a governing board effectively to work together in that manner to serve that purpose. And there are some social partners that are involved in that, but substance abuse and mental health issues are a growing issue in our community, and we have to be more intentional about how we're providing access to those things to persons who are high risk. I don't have the most recent data, but I think oftentimes when we have homicide victims or suspects, most of them have had some recent interaction with law enforcement. It's very uncommon for them to be not on someone's grid. I think there's an opportunity for us to be more intentional in how we're reaching out to those individuals when we know they're high risk, other than just surveillance. There's an opportunity for us to do more proactive outreach as far as opportunities as well. And so I like to continue that dialogue. Another piece of the conversation has been around more officers. I had a conversation recently with one of my constituents. It was a wife of an officer, and he happened to be African American, and her concern was that he's overextended. He works in a zone where they're understaffed. They have to cover a huge area, and they're back to back to back, and they still have to write tickets and respond to high-risk situations, and just the stress it is on her family when he is at home. And so we have to look at this from a balanced approach. One thing we talked about at some point was taking a different approach at how we look at staffing. We got the staffing study back, and my suggestion was that we use that and put together a 5-year plan, looking at the attrition and the retirements that are coming out to begin to fill the positions, because the city's budget doesn't really allow for us to give an extra $3 or $5 million to get to the level that is suggested, but that we work together, if that is not already happening, that we work together to put together a strategy on intentionally getting our staffing levels up to what's recommended with the support of the department. So if that is not the direction that we're going with that, I'd like to encourage the board to consider that as an approach that we use, because we have to do that. That is something we have to figure out, how do we deal with that? Because in that scenario, what immediately came to my mind was you got an overextended, stressed out officer that's out responding to high-risk incidents. That's not a good situation. And it's not all the time, but that's one incident that I recently heard of that gave me different perspective on how we should look at this issue. You know, I think that what we're doing is great. I think that there is an opportunity for us to be intentional about how we come around this issue, and not just because we're looking at numbers. It's because we're looking at solutions and bringing all the people to the table that are willing to work on those solutions, and that we have a long-term commitment to those solutions. We support programs, we fund all kind of programs, but there has to be a long-term, the mayor has done a great job putting some great initiatives together, and I hope that, you know, after July 31st that they continue. But the new administration may have different priorities, but that speaks to the necessity of having things in place where there's a long-term commitment to things that are working. And I'm not sure that we have those commitments across the board where they matter at this time. And so I offer that just to address the concerns of the community, and also to acknowledge the input from President Garrett and also from Commissioner Shuren on your remarks. And there's a few other previous presidents that gave comment on it as well. But it's not lost on us that we got to do something. But I think that what we're doing shouldn't be overshadowed by the growing problem. We need to figure out how we can do more on the prevention side to reduce the growing problem. I offer that. If any comments or questions, I'd like them at this time.
Very much appreciate your comments. I will tell you that this is the epitome of a team sport in tackling this. It sounds cliche, but it's so. And you know, the essence of my comments were really focused on, you know, the members of that community that are so adversely impacted by this. And I think people like yourself bring an irreplaceable voice to that conversation, from a credibility perspective, from an insightfulness that people like I can't possibly have. That's why it takes us all, and it's not a destination. I mean, so says the guy with 2 teenage kids. Parenting is not a destination. It's a journey, and it never ends. Till they take me away, it won't end. And I think the same is here, is we just get up every day and we put our shoulder to the wheel. And so I encourage you, and I encourage others that are here today and elsewhere in this community to participate in this discussion, participate in every way in the enforcement realm, but also in the more proactive, longer range realm of what we can do to help curb and reduce, and if not ever eliminate, but to manage it. So I appreciate very much your comments today. Any other questions or comments from the board? Good. Thank you very much. Chief, was there anything else from you? I may have stepped over you. Okay, great. Public comments. I think we had one person who had signed.
Newell Mitchell.
Mr. Mitchell, welcome. Mr. Mitchell, I would just tell you we do try to limit it to about 3 minutes or so to keep things moving, but just on the front end. All right, thank you.
Is there any reason the microphones are off?
Off, you said?
No, because I couldn't hear a little.
Oh, is that right?
Does everybody hear me back there? I'm Newell Mitchell. This is the first time I've been here. I don't know anybody that's here, and I doubt if you know me. I've seen the mayor on TV. The internal affairs person I talked to, I told him my concerns, and he suggested that I come here. So that's why I'm here. I have what I think are some questions that need to be answered, and that's why I'm here.
Welcome.
The best way to describe me and to tell you who I am, a couple years ago, I moved from zip code 66212, Overland Park, to zip code 64130. And everybody I talked to said, gee, that's quite a change, and it's true. I came over here with I knew what I was getting into. I go to Village Presbyterian Church. We've been involved in the Ivanhoe area for a number of years. And so it wasn't like I didn't know what I was getting into. The reason I'm here, though, is the fact that recently, December 4th, in fact, I was involved with the police department. I had told my neighbor he had a job interview, and he, like a lot of people, don't have cars. And I let him borrow my car to go to a job interview, and on his way home, he stopped in a strip mall, ran into the Green Tree store, but he had parked in a fire lane. And he called me and said, you know, when I came out, a tow truck had loaded my vehicle. And I said, oh, my God. And so I only have one car, so I caught a ride from another neighbor down to the strip mall. When I got there, the tow truck operator said that they had a contract with the owner of the strip mall, private property, and they could tow people. I said, well, you know, that doesn't sound really right, but I said, let me call 911. I called 911, and in about a half hour, the policeman arrived. He explained to me that that's true, that the police couldn't help me in any way because the tow company was on private property and they had a right to tow my car. So I went home, and then I started looking on the internet and looked at the ordinance that Kansas City has for tow operators. And this particular company was in violation of everything. There were just a few things that they were in compliance with. So that set me to thinking that, you know, there should be something that we can do, and I look to the police to do it, is to keep I don't know what you would call it, but they are not in compliance with our ordinances. So I called the chief's number from December 4th for about 2 weeks. I called you 10 times. Not once did you call me back. Not once. And that really upset me. For some reason, the police chief, he didn't know why I was calling. I could have been calling about a terrorist that was sitting, you know, next to me. But he didn't think it was right, or didn't think it was important enough to call me back. And so I said, well, you know, he's a busy man. He doesn't know me. I'm sure that if the mayor called him, he would call him back. But, you know, you go to the police department and you see all these signs that say, you know, if you see something wrong, you should call us, call us, call us. So, you know, that's one reason I'm here, is because I want you to know, and I want the chief to know, that you should return all calls, okay? And I think I've called the officers, the headquarters down on the South Precinct, the commander there. She hasn't returned my calls. So I'm just sort of frustrated in dealing with the police, because I think the police ought to enforce the ordinances that we have in Kansas City. And I've been down there and talked to captains and explained the whole situation that I was in, and they haven't done anything. So I don't know who I can go to keep this tow company from going to our shopping center on East 63rd Street. I went by there 2 weeks ago, Saturday night, which is real busy, and there's 4 tow trucks waiting to get people. And you know, in my neighborhood, $300, you just don't have $300 to give somebody to get your car back. Plus, you have to go out to Grain Valley to get it. Now, what kind of situation is that? And that's what I wanted to talk to the chief about. Do you have an answer?
The person who owns the strip mall is the person who contracts with that tow company. The city doesn't have anything to do with it.
What if you know that the tow company is not in compliance with the regulations?
We have a regulated industries in Kansas City, Missouri. That's their purview, is to check things that are regulated, like tow trucks. So we can
I
stop
must
them.
have missed it. Who is responsible for keeping?
Mr. Mitchell, I don't mean to cut you off, because I appreciate and value your comments, but just to move things along, Chief, can you have someone talk to him here before you leave today and give some?
Well, I'm leaving here because I have to go pick up a guy at dialysis.
Okay, I understand, but we will have someone speak to you right here.
Anybody?
Yeah, Merrill, right back there, that gentleman
Okay,
in the back.
I'll go talk to him.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yep,
Thank you for your comments.
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
Is there anyone else?
Merrill, thank you. Approval of minutes from December 17, well, no, that's not going to be right. Yeah, December 17, 2018. Is there a motion for approval of the open minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shuren,
Second.
second by Mayor James. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I understand that Sergeant Lemon's not here today. Is that correct? All right. Is there any update from the lodge in lieu of Sergeant Lemon? Okay, thank you. Colonel Lewis?
Thank
All
you,
you.
Commissioner. Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioners, Mr. Mayor. I have a fairly short list of items for your consideration this morning, two that are included in your book, and then at your seats I have an add-on document that I've placed before you. The first item is item A under tab B in your books, are the standard monthly budget transfers for fiscal year 2018-19. The general fund transfer this morning is for the purpose of moving appropriations within various personal services accounts to payroll. That requested transfer amount is $900,000. The second budget transfer is for the moving of $30,800 from personal services, with $800 going to contractual services and $30,000 going to commodities. As is the standard practice with the detail provided on the document before you, the current appropriation column and the adjusted appropriation columns will be in balance with these transfers at $241,387,022. Recommend approval of these transfers as requested.
So moved.
Moved by Mayor James, second by Commissioner Wagner. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes.
Thank you. Item B is a request to accept our auditing services contract for the upcoming audit year. On December 5th, 2018, a request for proposal for a one-year contract to provide professional financial auditing services to the department was opened. As detailed, the contract period is from February 1st, 2019 through January 31st of 2020, with an option to renew for 4 additional one-year periods based on mutual agreeable pricing, quality of service, and the availability of funding. As you are aware, the annual audit of our accounts is in accordance with Chapter 84 of the Missouri Revised Statutes. 25 firms were invited to submit proposals. From that, we received 5 responses. We are recommending the contract award go to Cochran, Head, Vick and Company, located at 1251 Northwest Briarcliff Parkway, Kansas City, Missouri. Cochran, Head, Vick and Company met all of our requirements in the RFP. We have contracted with them for the past 10 years and have been very satisfied with their services. The first year quote from Cochran, Head, Vick and Company is for $72,010. Their proposal includes the following: 629 hours of estimated time for completion. They have been with us, as I stated, for 10 years, and the average amount of time that it takes to complete the audit is about 600 hours, so they're right in line with that 629. They will also, included in their proposal, is they will audit 2 major programs. 2 major programs include, every year it has to be our asset forfeiture seizure account, and then a major federal grant that we receive funds from. So that's always included annually in two major programs. They do provide 20% minority participation through Ralph C. Johnson and Company, 20 hours of consultation for our use throughout the department, and in-house training sessions for our folks who work in accounting. And we do actually take advantage of those services they provide. So if the contract were renewed, as we're asking for this morning, the 4 additional one-year periods, the total amount for the 5 years would be $377,028. And again, we are recommending approval for awarding this contract to Cochran Head Vick and Company.
Any questions? And if not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mayor James for approval. Second. Second by Commissioner Wagner. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is approved.
Thank you. The third item I have for your consideration is the add-on item that I have placed at your seats, and it is for a robot purchase. You may or may not recall back in November, at the November 13th board meeting, I presented for you to formally accept a supplemental appropriation from the City of Kansas City in the amount of $406,650 for the purchase of a new robot for our Special Operations Division. At my direction to expedite the process, a purchase order was prepared on December 28th and issued to Northrop Grumman Remote Tech Incorporated to facilitate that purchase for an Andros FX bomb robot and the related equipment in the amount of $414,870. This price comes after quotes were obtained in December totaling that amount. The difference between the appropriation amount of $406,000 and the purchase price of $414,870 is $8,220. That $8,220 will be paid out of the department's general fund, and we did agree with the city that we would pay some of these costs. So that is in accordance with the supplemental appropriation. This is a sole source purchase due to the Remotech product being the highest quality and the top of the industry standard, a standard which we are compelled to maintain. Additionally, this system has interoperability capabilities with other related equipment currently utilized by our bomb and arson section personnel. Finally, the bomb and arson members are already familiar with and trained in many aspects on this product. As previously discussed, you already approved the acceptance of the appropriation, and we're now asking for approval for the actual purchase of the robot in the amount of $414,870. Recommend approval.
Motion for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shuren. Second. Second by Commissioner Wagner. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? It's approved.
Thank you. That concludes my items for your consideration and approval this morning. As an informational item, I'll give you a very brief update on our communications unit. We're nearing 1 million, or we nearly received 1 million calls for calendar year 2018. 963,736 came into our communications unit. From that, nearly 560,000 of those were through the 911 system. I am very happy to report our 911 hold times for the month of December was 11 seconds. That came down from 15 seconds the previous month, if you'll recall, and from 21 seconds last December. Staffing, we are the same that we were last month at 98, which puts us down 8, and we still have 34 applicants that are in the process. Had some discussions with HR and Major Francisco this week about trying to get some additional backgrounds done and get some of those applicants through the process, and they are working diligently to do that. So I think we're gearing up to have a new class at the at the end of this month, so we see some hope on the horizon for filling some of those slots as well.
Congratulations on continuing to move that number down.
Thank you.
Very important, Roger. Thank you.
The last thing, as an informational item, if I would, I'd just like to take note of a donation that we did receive this month of $1,250 from the Police Foundation, as retired Major Fletcher was here this morning. And this was for a Christmas program to assist 12 children and their families that was hosted at Central Patrol Division. Great. If there are no further questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Thank you. Colonel Kuehl.
Morning.
Good morning.
Mine is pretty short and sweet this morning. We don't have any policies for approval. So they're pretty proximate to the last meeting. We don't have any new ones. I'll point you to tab C, where you'll see the basic training class summary for the academy. That is the same as it was last month. There's nothing new in there. I did want to point out to all of you, though, there is a typo in there. The graduation for the 164th class is actually next Thursday, the 17th, at 6 p.m., and we'd like to extend an invitation to any and all of you to come to that. We're excited to get some more recruits out on the street. And if there are no questions about the academy class summary, I just wanted to mention that we did take 11 kids and 3 chaperones to the Raiders game. Go Chiefs. And so that was a fun event all the way around, not only fun to watch, but fun to have the kids there. Yeah. And so we continue to be able to get them to games, and they love it. For some of them, it's their first major sporting event that they've ever been to. It's really fun to watch them. And that's really all I have today, if you don't have any questions.
If you could have someone send an invite on that, on the dates on that academy graduation, please. To everybody. Colonel Bosworth.
Got
Good morning.
Year-end numbers for us?
Yes, sir, I do. My information's under tab D, also on the blue sheet. To date, in 2019, we've had 4 homicides. That's compared with 2 in 2018, 0 in 2017, and 6 in 2016.
Rough start.
It is. At the end of last year, we had 136 homicides compared to 151 for 2017. I'll give you some numbers on shooting victims. As of December 31st, end-of-year totals were 450 shooting victims. That's compared to 506 in 2017. That's about an 11% decrease in shooting victims. In December of this year, we did have an increase of 36% compared to December of 2017, 45 to 33.
On what specifically?
On bullet to skin victims who have been shot. Turn your attention to the drive-by shooting report. We had 422, and you'll see a pattern here. Everything's about 11%. We had 422 in 2018 compared to 2017, where we had 475 for an 11% decrease. We had 30 in December of 2018 compared to 41 in December of 2017. In 2018, we recovered, in the firearm report would be next, we recovered 2,205 firearms, and that's compared to 2,179 for 2017, just a slight increase in that number. We did have 199 felon in possession cases for 2018 that were presented to the prosecutor's office. And then if I can turn your attention to the narcotics and vice report.
One thing I want to, our homicide clearance rate had increased in 2018. I want to ask about that because, you know, it's one question people have, what's that mean? What's a clearance rate even mean? You know, as we talk about, you know, there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle of trying to reduce violent crime and homicides being the top of those. And so that sounds good because, you know, we've got these proactive efforts that are taking place that we spend a lot of time and energy, as we should, talking about.
the other piece of this is just what are we doing about enforcing those crimes that have occurred, looking back? What are we doing about it, and how are we doing with it? So that increase in clearance rate and homicides sounds good to me, but I want to understand really what that actually represents.
I may ask Ty Grant to come up and discuss it a little bit, but we count our homicides a bit differently than a lot of jurisdictions in that some jurisdictions will not count self-defense determinations by a prosecutor's office. And as far as clearance rate goes, some jurisdictions, if there's an arrest, it's a clearance rate. But not only do they have to be charged, but they also have to be arrested and in custody before we will clear it. Is that right, Ty?
And that rate this year, top of my head, it's like 74% or something
Right.
near that. And prior to that, was it 60?
62, 61.
62?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm pleased about that, and so those things matter, and Ty, credit to you. That's pushing the right direction. So I wanted to make sure everyone understood where we were with that and its significance. The other thing I'd note before you get to the narcotics that, I just, as I go through these numbers that is impressed upon me is, it's easy to hear and sort of take an accounting approach and say, well, we're up 12, down 18, 14%, 6%. That's people's lives, right? This is people's lives. So I know it's not lost on the people that are doing this day in and day out, but for all of us who have a component of responsibility here, pushing this in the right direction is not to make anybody look good. It's protecting lives. So when we talk about, our Part 1 violent crimes are down 8%. That's okay. That's good. Yeah. But what's that really mean? What's that really mean? That means 601 people, were not victimized. Right. 601. I don't know if we get 601 in this room. So, I just want to say that as we talk statistically, remind everybody what we're talking about.
Every one of these crimes affects a citizen, so.
Okay. So anyway, go ahead.
Narcotics and Vice report.
That includes the drive-by shootings, which is 53 of them. That's
Right.
53 drive-by shootings. That's a hell of a lot. Okay.
Narcotics-related arrests, I'll point out, they're up 22%, and the sale of narcotics are up 24%. Cocaine is still down, but as I said, I think at the last couple board meetings, we are seeing an increase in the smaller amounts out in the street.
Cocaine you're talking about?
Right.
Okay.
And we've been advised by our HIDTA partners that that's going to make a big comeback. We just quite haven't seen the large quantities here yet. Marijuana is still up big, 108%. And I think Major Grant and our homicide detectives will tell you that a good portion of our narcotics-related homicides involve marijuana. Heroin is down, and prescription pills and opiates is up 46%. Our search warrants are up, which is good. I will make one more comment. This year we had 38 people who died of an overdose this year in Kansas City. That's compared to 25 last year. So that's a significant increase. Our narcotics folks continue.
Is that a drug-specific thing, or is that?
Yeah, it's mostly opiates, heroin to be specific. However, whenever we get the lab results back, there's always a mixture, marijuana, meth, and some type of opiate. 33 non-fatal overdoses where the victim was revived by Narcan. And then, if there's no questions on that, the chief wanted me to talk a little bit about Project Safe Neighborhood and the Public Safety Partnership. It kind of addresses a little bit of what Councilperson Candidate was talking about. These two initiatives are both being led by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And Gene Porter has done presentations, I believe, for KC Nova Governing Board. He did a presentation on December 28th here for some community service providers and other community leaders. So I will let him, I'm going to invite him, if it's okay with the board and the chief, to give about a 15, 20-minute presentation at a future board meeting.
I talked to Gene about that myself.
Okay.
And Gene and I are scheduled to have lunch, and we're
collaborating on some of these things. Gene and I are old friends, and
Good man.
That is a relationship that I value greatly, not the personal one, yes, that too, but the one we enjoy with the U.S. Attorney's Office. So I asked Gene if he would be willing in a future meeting to talk about some of the initiatives that are to come in the partnership between us and the federal government. So, yes, I fully support that.
So the chief wanted me to discuss a little bit about where we're going on the enforcement portion. There's going to be 3 portions to this. One's prevention, that's the first portion. The second is intervention of violent crime. And then the third, if needed, is enforcement. Myself, Jackson County Prosecutor's Office, all the 3-letter agencies, except maybe the CIA, but I probably wouldn't know if they were there anyway. And Missouri Probation and Parole. We all went as a group to Birmingham, Alabama for the PSP Symposium. And we discussed our violent crime issues, and at the time, we had, I believe, 96 homicides when I was at this symposium, 88 of which had been committed with a firearm. So obviously, our main issue is violent gun crime. Our previous focused deterrent strategy included large groups based on social network analysis. PSP was here last year, and we were a diagnostic site for them, and they made some recommendations on how we could change things if we wanted to improve our violent crime numbers, reduce them. I guess the best way to say it is, we message folks and tell them that out of this group, if somebody in this group commits a violent act, we're going to take enforcement action on the entire group. And some of these groups could be 100, 200, 300 folks. And with limited jail capacity, that we just really couldn't back up those statements because nobody was staying in jail. So our focus needs to be on the chronic violent gun offenders, the people that are actually pulling the triggers. And we have agreed, we haven't finalized exactly the system we're going to use, but I will tell you we're going to kind of model it after Tampa. Basically, Tampa had reduced their violent crime by 12.8%, and then their violent gun crime by 26.8 or 27.6% when they implemented this program. It is basically a system, an objective system that helps us identify and target those chronic individuals that are out there shooting guns and shooting people. And I'll have a more detailed approach or presentation for you once we finalize that, hopefully by next month. And maybe I can get Gene to come then too, or you can.
Yep. He's agreed.
He's agreed. It might take more than 20 minutes though.
Yeah.
And that concludes my presentation.
I would note that I think the U.S. Attorney here in West Virginia, Missouri hosted the National Project Safe Neighborhoods Conference.
Yes, he did.
Union Station, or not, Crown Center, is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Good. Anything else?
No, I don't believe so.
Colonel Oakman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My items are under tab E, and I have the Regional Crime Lab report as well as the personnel summary. If you don't have any questions on either of those items.
Continues to look good. We've talked about it at some length, but
Trending in the right direction.
pay attention to it. I know the board is pleased with the trend there.
A lot of that is staff
Linda and her staff
money
have done it. Yep. Yep.
and management. So
It doesn't look like our load is decreasing.
it's actually increasing.
Yeah, right.
And also, I attached Employment 2018, just some highlights of some of the recruiting events as well as changes that we've put in place in 2018. Due to time, I just gave each member of the board a list. There are a few things that I would like to highlight on applications. In 2018, we received 2,930 applications. In 2017, we received 1,047. So applications have increased about 50%. And most of that's due to the creation of the online application process. Also, on hires on LE, last year, 2018, we hired 109 opposed to 73 in 2017. And if you look at the number, of those 2,900 applications, 945 was for LE. So if you look at the amount of applications that we take in for LE, we end up hiring somewhere between 12% of the applications that we put in. That's why it's so important to really get out and recruit, because the larger your recruitment base, your numbers, the better applicants you will have to select from. And as the chief I know mentioned before, we're not necessarily hurting for people to apply for the police department. It's just making sure that we're hiring those people that fit our standards, as well as that would be excellent fits for the city of Kansas City.
What's the leadership model? Right people on the bus, wrong people off the bus?
There you go.
I did notice, too, and it just kind of struck me when I was looking at your numbers there, on that the recruitment includes the youth.
Yes.
Piece of that. And we've mentioned that before, I'm sure, but it just is worth mentioning again, that recruitment is not, when you going to the job fairs and that kind of stuff, that's all good, that's important, but where we need to be really recruiting, not just in our relationships with our youth who grow into our adults, and that's the stage of life that we need to intervene and build, but also recruiting.
Right, correct.
Future officers at a young age and changing that impression for the good of the community, but also for the good of this department.
I tell you, I was a sergeant in employment in 2003 to 2006, and I had mentioned that we needed to start looking at the younger groups to start cultivating those people, and it was, no, we need what we can get right now. And I told myself, if I ever got in a position to make that change, I would, not knowing that I eventually would be in that position.
Colonel, you've arrived.
Yes, I have. So, and like I said, with the support of the chief, because he's a big proponent of really the youth and preparing that. And like I said, we may not see the result today, but we're here to make the place better when we leave, so we have to put things in place for the future.
Ralph Waldo Emerson, I think, said that that's the epitome of true generosity, is planting a seed for a tree under which you may never rest.
There you go.
I'd like to add, just with the YPI program, our first day when the kids don't want to speak to the cops, and then Friday night we have our dinner, so Monday they come in and get oriented to the program, and then Friday night's the celebration dinner. In both classes, all three classes we have, people who didn't want to talk to us, by the time we get to Friday and break down barriers, they're asking us what they need to do to become police officers. So to Carl's point, if we didn't have that interaction, I'm sure if we didn't have that influence in someone's life, that would never be an option, right? Because of the negative stigma of law enforcement, especially in some communities. And it just goes to show that interaction totally makes a difference.
No downside at all.
Right, exactly.
All upside. All upside. Carl, I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Colonel Lanigan. Good morning.
Speaking of upsides, we're going to start with a few slides of some of the wonderful things that have happened in the Patrol Bureau in December, community interaction type things, just different events for the season. First off, Metro Patrol school resource officers took a group of 12 ROTC students from Southeast High School to the Academy for a field trip. Academy staff showed them around, including the media production unit and the Vertra training. So they got to play with that shoot, don't shoot scenario that we train on. Next was a CPD Christmas event. They hosted a Christmas celebration with several families that they thought could use a little Christmas cheer. They identified 4 families with a total of 12 children. Through the efforts of Sergeant Don Jones and the assistance of the Police Foundation, a private donor contributed over $1,200 that went toward purchasing 4 gifts for each child, pizza for the party, a turkey for each family, and a gift for each of the parents. The gifts were purchased off each child's Christmas list, and at the end of the event, Santa made an appearance. Several officers participated by decorating cookies with the children, coloring holiday pictures, and playing with their new toys. This was a wonderful event that brought much joy to the officers, the children, and the parents, and several news outlets attended. Next, EPD and Tactical Response Team 1 did a family adoption. They adopted 4 families for Christmas this year, identified by the East Patrol Division school resource officers and their social worker. Our members purchased gifts for the families, a small portion in the included photo. A friend, Jessica James, daughter-in-law to the mayor, supplied an entire home-cooked meal for each family. Tactical members, admin assistant Missy Rusley, and Major Thomas and their families delivered the gifts. This was the 3rd year for that event. North Patrol Division Salvation Army Christmas Project.
Wait a minute, go back, go back one. To the one where they're standing, right there, yeah. That little kid there, that's Race Xavier James.
Nice.
Just want to point him out.
He doesn't have a uniform on.
He will if you give him a shot.
North Patrol Division Salvation Army Christmas Project. CIOs Pavlovic and Lozano attended the Salvation Army Christmas gift and food giveaway at 5306 North Oak. They partnered with other volunteers to deliver food to qualified families. Shoal Creek and North Patrol CIOs at East Patrol Division, the Christmas ham giveaway. Hy-Vee and Harvester sponsored the event, and they gave away 500 hams to community members. They did this both at Thanksgiving and at Christmas. And lastly, Army Sergeant donated sheets for DV victims. We have this program where we give sheets and bedding to victims of domestic violence and sexual crimes. So this Army Sergeant heard about this and came to us and donated. He gathered and donated and gave it to our CSI unit, and they hand those out when they meet up with those victims. So that's a small snippet, but it's
Yep.
good stuff.
Great, thank you.
Before we get into my numbers, I wanted to give you an overview of the Operation 100s compared from 2017 to 2018. We had 50 Operation 100s during 2017.
Remind people what Operation 100s are.
Armed barricaded parties where our tactical response teams come out and negotiate with these people, try to come to a safe conclusion. And so we had 50 in 2017 and 61 in 2018. Next, we will go to, this was an add-on, it was a late monthly crime summary. I think we laid it on your spots. Commissioner Garrett, it was neat to hear you refer to these numbers in people, because I look at them, we all look at them every year, every month, and you don't really think about it, but, you know, there was 35 less rapes than last year. That's 35 less people that had to go through that. Aggravated assaults, they were up 461, but aggravated assaults were down 314. Total year percent change from 2017 to 2018 was down 8%. Total Part 1 crimes down 4%. Two consecutive years, robbery has gone down 14%, and that is a significant pattern. And then if you look at the monthly comparison, which is, of course, a lot different than the yearly, but it's still significant, was down 33% from October of 18 to November of 18. That's huge. I believe proactive patrols. We did a lot of proactivity. We have our impact squads out where we know these robberies are occurring. We're focusing on patterns instead of individuals, and we're just saturating the areas in the times that we know these crimes are occurring, and we're getting as many off the streets as we can. So that was a significant statistic. Okay. The next page, monthly offense summary. Breaks down the numbers a little bit further than the earlier. Robbery again, down 14% and 15%. And then they've got the total for monthly change at 35%. Homicides, year-to-date, 17 to 18, down 9%. And monthly was down 60% homicides. Total crimes against property, down 5%, year-to-date, 17 to 18. Total Group A offenses, down 3%. We had an excellent November. We're hoping that we have an excellent December as we look at them next month. They're going in the right direction. Now, unless you have any questions on the individual division reports, I'll lead you to the median response times. It's about 5 pages back. We are at 7.3 minutes for priority 10 calls. That's our response time. Our goal is 7.50, so we're very close. We're way better than we were in 2016, and we've remained that way all the way through this year. Our priority 20 calls, the goal is 9 minutes, and we're at 9.57. Still way better than we were in 16 and 17, but we've got a bit to go. But these numbers, combined with the numbers that Colonel Lewis talked about, less time on hold, better response times, we're getting there faster, we're getting to these people quicker. The next page, you can see geography holds out for response times. It takes us longer to get to calls in the larger geographic divisions of the station, divisions of the city. And in the inner city, we do a little bit better, just sheer miles. And same thing holds out with priority 20 calls, the next page. Flip over to the traffic summary.
Let me ask you something. Hold on a minute. On the response times, is that a result of more officers on the street?
Some of
much
it
as
has to do
anything?
with personnel. I think some of it does. It's personnel, it's staffing, it's miles that people have to travel, it's how many calls for service are in queue. There's a lot of variables in that.
There's priority 10 and priority 20. Is there anything else? Or is that all of the calls? They're either 10 or 20?
Yes, the ones that we go on are either 10 or 20. Okay. Traffic summary. I'm very pleased to announce that our traffic tickets from December of 2017 to December of 2018 were up 30%. That's from 116,500 to 151, almost 152,000. And DUIs, in addition to the 62 DUI city citations, there were an additional 31 cases submitted for state prosecution, bringing the total to 93. This includes the Wolfpack arrests that are listed on a different page. The next page, citywide total crash statistics.
Are those cases you're saying, those DUI cases from the 62 to the 90, the 31 that were submitted to the state, are those mostly felony
Yes.
submissions?
Yes. They
Or
take
only
long.
felony submissions?
They take longer, so that's why they're different from the ones that we count quickly, monthly. Some of them take longer, so that the cases take longer to submit, prepare and submit.
I'm
Go ahead.
Is there, the number of citations being up, can you point to ways that it has increased safety in driving? That it has reduced the number of accidents, reduced DUIs, had any, what the effect of that is?
I have a graph that I'll bring next month that we're working on. It's just about ready. We need to discuss it internally, but it does show a relationship to traffic tickets issued and fatalities. So we do believe there's a correlation.
The reduction in DUIs, that's down about 100 between 17 and 18. Is that due to reducing the checkpoints or more use of Uber and Lyft or a combination, or do you know?
I would say the reduction in the state money that came in, that we couldn't run as many checkpoints, I would say that is the major cause of that. Possibly Uber. I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
I think that's a pretty good point, though. You know, the Uber and Lyft. I wonder about that because that's obviously much more accessible and common than it was to call a cab.
We can look for some information on that. Maybe there's something out there.
I think it's a good point. Yeah.
I do, just so the board knows, we continue to advocate for the restoration of the state money for DUI checkpoints. We think there's not just an enforcement issue but a publicity issue and a deterrent when we know that we're running checkpoints, and having that tool out of the toolbox, we think is, you know, it is, I don't want to say it's hurting, but it's not helping getting the message out of drinking and driving as consequences.
Well, and as we know, checkpoints, for those of us who've run a lot of them, it's not just DUIs you get out of those checkpoints too. I mean, you can net a lot of positive enforcement out of those.
But, you know, it's the media stories, sorry, Sharon, the media stories that go with it and the news, other things, it's the whole message of that we're paying attention. And we're losing that without that tool.
And when we get to fatalities at the very end, 47% of those this year were impaired drivers. That's huge.
Always that way, yeah. And, you know, if you look at our, you know, homicides, violent crime, generally speaking, you know, it's a correlation that you don't see a lot of statistics on. But the amount of drugs and alcohol and that are contributing, I just know from my own empirically, I don't remember being too many violent scenes.
Your own experience?
Pardon? Yeah. But there's usually a correlation and relationship.
And I would throw robberies in there too.
That's why, you know, I'm sure most people in this room cringe when people talk about victimless crime and drugs. You just
Not so.
haven't seen what everybody else around here has seen, so, yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to the citations.
Okay.
First place, the all other number increased about 20,000. I'd like to know a description of what the all other is. Second, I don't, next month when you come up.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I note that with the number of citations up, still the number of collisions is up also. So, I'm just not sure how you tie, the fatality collisions are down, what difference that makes when the total collisions are up. But anyway, I'll leave it for you for next month.
I'll throw out one and
Bring me
all
up
other
to-
that I think of right off the top of my head is our commercial vehicle enforcement activity. They did 469 stops of commercial vehicles this month, and they wrote 339 federal violations. So that's a lot. I think most of those would be, maybe not all of them, but some of them would be included in other. But I'll find out and we'll expand on that next month.
Okay, thank you.
Citywide total crash statistics, almost 700 more than last year, sadly. Top traffic complaints. I had to look up 1710 Southern Road. I had no idea on that one. It's between Shoto and Doramus, north of Front Street. Yeah. Somebody complained. Parking control section. That's a good number. I'm glad to report. We have 34,196 citations issued in 2018. That is 13,118 more than we had last year. And that's due to the city bringing on extra PCOs, and we're edging very close to getting all 10 of those online.
I just wish they'd stay away from my block.
Now, you asked me before to send some people down there.
Don't worry, aren't you reaching that age where they're not going to let you drive anymore?
I will say, you know, when we started this, we had a ton of complaints from business owners, especially in the crossroads, about not turning over parking spots, that it was hurting their business. And since we've had an increase in our parking control, those complaints have dropped tremendously. So I think it is helping. I mean, if this is an overall, as I keep repeating, everyone thinks this is about enforcement. This is about an overall parking control plan with the city, with the garages, the meters, everything. We have meetings with the city manager. The idea is to allow people to get downtown, you know, efficiently park, use the businesses, the amenities, and so that everyone can get in and out. And so we're part of that plan. So that's what this is about.
Just trying to keep people from parking to come to my law firm.
I'm not, no, sir, we're not.
Thank you. It's good to know.
We're going for
No, that's
compliance.
another problem. Let's look elsewhere.
Traffic investigations section activity, there's 5 detectives and 1 sergeant there. They submitted 65 state cases last month. That's a lot of good work. Talked about commercial vehicle. So lastly, we'll get to fatalities. There were 85 this year compared to 99 last year. So that's 14 less. There were 9 this December. And the very last page, our highest similarities that run through our fatalities are male drivers not wearing their seat belts and were somehow impaired, drugs or alcohol. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any more questions? Colonel, thank you. And Ms. Atterbury?
Nothing at this time, Commissioners.
Director Bennigan? Good morning.
Good morning. I just want to give you an update on the citizen that came and made public comment. On or about December 7th of last year, the Office of Community Complaints was notified and received a complaint from Mr. Mitchell. He gave his formal statement to the Internal Affairs Unit on yesterday. There are also concurrent investigations going with Internal Affairs, but also one in the regulated industries with the City of Kansas City to address his parking concern. And just as an aside, once a complaint has been filed, in most cases, it would be improper for a member of the department, even the chief of police, to have contact with that citizen once we have an investigation going. So that would probably account for the fact that Chief Smith was not able to or did not contact Mr. Mitchell, because once that matter has been referred to the Office of Community Complaints, we respectfully ask that the department maintain their distance until we're able to conduct our review. So that's all I have right now. Next month, we will provide an update on some of our initiatives for 2019 and also give a preliminary snapshot of our annual report that will be released in March or April. But other than that, if you have any questions, I can answer those at this time. Yes, sir.
Tell Mr. Mitchell that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And matter
Did
of
you
fact,
tell him that before he came today?
No, I did not have, well, that I do not know, because he had contact with one of our senior legal analysts, but I'll make sure that he has a lot of times when people are new to the jurisdiction, they don't have an understanding of how that complaint process works. So we're going to be working with him to make sure that he has all of the information that he needs from this point forward. And we do apologize for any misunderstanding that might have occurred in the transmission of that information. But from this point forward, we'll make sure that we maintain constant contact with Mr. Mitchell so that he has an understanding of how these reviews will proceed. Also, I'd like just to announce, and then we'll put something out in the Daily Informant, the Badges and Baseball event will occur on February 9th at the Urban Youth Academy. There's going to be 2 sessions this year, a morning session and an afternoon session, because this year we're trying to accommodate youth on both sides of the state line. That's all that I have.
Merrill, thank you. Commissioner Wagner, anything from the Audit Committee?
Audit Committee is going to meet in the following 30 days, and we'll have a report for you next month.
David, anything?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Mayor James?
I'm good.
Is there a motion to adjourn and go into closed session?
So moved.
Moved by Mayor James. Second. Second by Commissioner Wagner. Garrett, aye?
James, aye.
Didn't wait for you, Don, sorry.
Roll call.